So my general thesis is that if you just keep being kind and nice to each other and you make it public, and you just give encouragement, whatever that might be that somebody needs, that eventually it'll matter, right? Like that's the idea behind the whole Reciprocity Project. Started out as building this platform to help us write. Still working on it. But then I realized, like, how do you get the word out there? How does people even pay attention to anything? And then I started on this sort of premise along the same thing is just be kind and nice to other people at random. Um, and, the general premise is to do that publicly. And now here's the thing, right? Like, um, I look at people would think, or even myself, right? In my head, I'm like, no, who listens to this? Nobody listens to this. It's such a small audience. Like, who cares, right? Like, only a couple people listen to this, and I think like nobody pays attention. And am I doing this? That's just like completely irrelevant. And that's the truth. It probably is at this moment in the grand scheme of things. However, it's not irrelevant to the one person or the two people that actually listen to this. And I think that's more the important thing is that you can't lose sight in doing something that is small. And you can't lose sight that what you're doing actually does matter to a few people. And I think that's a really important lesson to learn is that as long as it's helping out one or two people, like, isn't that the point of everything that we do, anyways? And if that's the case, um, you know, getting people to have some encouragement, to be kind to themselves, all these kind of things, if that's the case, isn't it all you really need? That you just help out one person or two people? I mean, even if it's one person, right? Like, I am just sitting in my car at this moment, or I'm just taking a little brief moment, a brief break, and it just affects one person by doing that. Isn't that good enough? Isn't that the whole point of doing something like this? And you did that for years and years and years and years and years, and you just affect one person. I would think that that would be okay. um, People would see, here's the problem, right? We get in this economic thinking where you're like, well, that's not important enough. That isn't, we're not maximizing value or maximizing our time spent. We should be getting greater returns. Well, yeah, I guess that's the case, but what's the alternative thing that you're going to be doing? So the alternative thing that you could be doing is maybe just sitting there listening to music, for example. That's nice, I guess. I mean, it's pleasure that I'm getting out of that, but this is pleasurable too. This is me learning about who I am as I'm doing this. And, I'm telling the story about who I am and how I grew up. Here's the thing that I have never had a whole, growing up, we never had anything, right? Like we were in a pretty poor family. Um, I look at it now, we were definitely poor, but we were doing okay. Like middle, so my dad worked at a pulp and paper mill, and there was six kids, and that was it. It was just my dad working at a pulp and paper mill. Now, if you work at a pulp and paper mill, you're making kind of like union wages. And we did okay. We got by, right? But with six kids, you're poor, but we got by. And here's the thing: my both my mom and my dad, they made do, and everything was all about making do. It wasn't about like let's have the greatest impact. Let's go and blow this thing up. Let's try to make as much as money. No, it was never that way. It was, let's just have a one-on-one thing where we're getting by and we're doing okay, and we're just making do with what we have. So we had an enormous garden. You've never seen such a garden for a single family. It was huge. It would, realistically, it was probably like as a you know garden for kitchen vegetables and stuff. It was probably a quarter of an acre or more. It was massive. It was probably more like half an acre of corn and potatoes and every other kind of vegetable you ever imagine. And they made that. They grew their own vegetables for the entire year. That's what we ate. I remember eating potatoes. And um, we ate potatoes from the garden. Once it got to like April, they get kind of yucky, but you still eat them anyways, right? By that time, they're very sweet. They're just not doing that well. We had a storage, a cold cellar. My dad kept all the vegetables. We had this old well. He kept it in the well. Um, we did all sorts of stuff. They did all sorts of stuff so that we can all live perfectly fine. We were perfectly fine. And so this is the thing: is get used to just making do with what you have. And I think that's the point, right? And if it just affects one person, right? It was like my parents. They just affected a couple of people, but man, they got by. We did okay. They didn't have a lot. We didn't have a lot. They were not highfalutin people by any sort of means. But man, we got by. And you make do. And I think that's the same thing with this, right? Like if you just affect one person or two people, that should be the expectation. That should be it. Even zero, that you're speaking and nobody's listening. But oh well, that's okay. You're doing your thing and it's growing a little bit, but that's it, right? Like somebody will stumble across it, and that's all that matters. Some rando person in the middle of nowhere stumbles across it, listens to it, says, I never thought about that, and moves on. That's the entire thing. And I think, like, that's the way that we should be viewing the world around us. It's not about having the most and the greatest and the biggest impact, but just kind of incrementally chipping away at things and making do and doing okay with what you actually have. And I think that's how you get from one place to the next and do okay with it. We got to remember that. All right. That's all I wanted to say. Take care and have a wonderful day. Bye.